Kevin Deal here with Kevin Deal Photography, and on today's episode we're doing something a little special. We're doing a crossover between two different YouTube channels. My channel, Kevin Deal Photography, and Jason Berkman Photography.
What's up, guys?
So check out the link in the description below and follow his channel. We're having a nice ISO 400 day here in Austin, Texas. The focus of today's episode is we're going to be doing street photography. We're going to be talking about some lens comparisons. I have the brand new Sigma 30mm 1.4 contemporary. And also I wanted to take the time to tell you that this episode was sponsored by Camera Exchange, who were nice enough to loan me a 35 1.4 from Fuji. Jason's primarily a Fuji shooter, and you love those aperture rings, right?
Absolutely love them. Absolutely.
Awesome. So this doesn't have one, so you're going to start with it today, and now you're going to shoot without one.
Oh, ouch. Are you really going to make me shoot with that thing?
Those of you who follow this channel know that I mainly shoot portraits. Today's episode's about street, but we happened to stumble upon Michael, whom I've been published with before, so I couldn't pass up the opportunity to test out both lenses for portraits. But since that wasn't what we were there to do, we said our hellos, our goodbyes, and we quickly moved back over to street.
What are you shooting on today?
I'm shooting on the XT4 with, right now I have the Sigma 30mm 1.4 on it.
So what are your general impressions so far of this lens?
It's quick. I still haven't figured out the autofocusing as far as I was on all tracking, and then I went to wide tracking. It seems to track a little bit better for focusing on subjects, moving subjects. It's really, really hard for me to go back to kind of like the DSLR feel. So I just got rid of my XS10 because of that whole DSLR thing. You know what I mean? Having to, well, I mean, I still have the Aperture Ring, which is great, but this thing doesn't have an Aperture Ring, so I'm like all over the place. I put it on auto shutter speed because I really didn't want to have to focus. I have this set at 400. I really didn't want to have to focus too much on the shutter speed. I trust this thing with the IBIS, and it's not going to get too too dark. Yeah, I don't like not having an aperture ring, but it's quick. But I like the 30 how wide it is for some of the architecture, but not so much when it comes to people.
All right, so you saw Jason's setup. He's using their flagship XT4. I'm using an older model. I believe this is from 2017. It's my XT20. Since I'm not primarily a Fuji user, I'm always of the opinion that your moneymaker camera, your moneymaker lens is the one you should drop the money on. But this is still an X-Trans sensor. It's a really awesome camera body. And so I like to use this for street photography. I may get an XT4 one day. I'm saving up for a GFX 100S though. I'm sure you Fuji users know what I'm talking about there and how much I got to save up for it. I'm starting off today with the 35 1.4, which the Camera Exchange was so gracious and nice to let me borrow, and they have sponsored today's video, so I do appreciate that. My overall general impressions are, it's had a pretty good hit rate with this autofocusing system. We'll check out the image quality when I get back to my computer, but it's a very well constructed lens. It seems to be fairly snappy. When I'm doing like a foreground and then I immediately transition to something in the background, sometimes it like misses and has to come back, I see. But it is a 10-year-old lens design. It's working in conjunction with a 5-year-old autofocusing system. So it's kind of what I expected. So I want to talk about the Aperture Ring from a Canon user's perspective. I'm kind of in the middle on it. I'm starting to get used to it, but I can take it or leave it. I can use this front dial, so that's not a big deal. But sometimes it is cool, like I just want to change my depth of field on the fly. It does have a nice tactile feel. I also shoot a lot of old school film cameras that are all manual focus, that have leaf shutters, that have the Aperture Ring built in. So I'm already kind of used to it, but I don't miss it when I don't have it. So I'm kind of like whatever, but I'm sure some of you Fuji users who are watching this are just like, no, I have to have the Aperture Ring. But if you're coming over from Sony, you're coming over from Canon, maybe you're using this as a second system, or maybe you're moving to transition over to it as your primary system. Getting something like the Sigma lenses that don't have the Aperture Ring may not be a big deal to you.
We walked around the Seaholm district here off the river in downtown Austin. We tested out both the Fuji and the Sigma lenses together on both of our camera bodies and just kind of got acclimated to our settings. But we were looking for a more photo-rich environment, and we happened to stumble upon this farmer's market, which was basically a jackpot. One of my favorite places to go to in any city is a train station, because there's usually a lot of characters there, but farmer's market is an excellent alternative. It's going to give you lots of opportunities for still shots, people running around, vendors, etc. So farmer's market, if you're a street photographer, is a pretty good environment to shoot in. Another thing I want to point out is for the video today, we decided to use Acros and Color Chrome as our simulations because they're very popular, they're very familiar, and those of you following along at home, when you see the examples, will have a good starting point for the colors or the tones. I put the Sigma through its paces. I was testing out how quickly it autofocused on everything, pretty fast. I tested things out like its minimum focusing distance. I tested out the bokeh on it. I put it through its paces. I just wanted to see how I generally liked the lens. I will tell you one of my favorite features of this lens is the manual focusing ring. It is so buttery smooth. If you're into manual focus, you're going to love this lens. I also took this time to relieve Jason of the aperture-less 30mm 1.4 from Sigma and gave him back the familiar feeling of the Fuji 35mm 1.4.
So, why do you like street photography? I like that everything's kind of spontaneous. You either get the shot or you don't get the shot. Also like people, just the kind of rawness of it. You know, if you're going out for a portrait shoot or whatever, you know the subject, you know what you're going to do. That's kind of raw in its own way, because if you're just going out in the city to do some like environmental stuff, it's a lot different. Yeah, doing street photography is way different because you don't really know what to expect unless you really know the areas you're going to. Like for me, like Austin is a new city for me. So kind of finding the cool spots, seeing what happens, you know, either you kind of see the shot, you take the shot and it's a good one, or you see the shot, you take the shot and then you get back and you're like, this really sucks. So I just like the spontaneity, and kind of taking risks, seeing if something works. It's just cool. And plus you don't have to be reliant on anything else but your eye, your camera, and where you're at.
Now, what got you into street photography?
I think I've always done it ever since I had my 35mm film camera. I just didn't call it anything. I just went on the street and just kind of started taking pictures of people and places. And I wanted a kind of a reason to go out and take photos because I didn't always have a subject, and I love just taking, oh gosh. I gotta get this little doggy. If she'll look up, and then you just see random things like little dogs with like Easter ears, and you just want to take a photo of it.
How do you deal with the discomfort of taking pictures of strangers? What advice do you have for people who are fascinated by street photography, but maybe they're like, oh, I'm not comfortable taking pictures of strangers?
Take the risk, try to take the risk. I usually don't, if I'm in a setting like this where there's tons of people around, they usually don't want to say like, oh, you're taking a picture of me, because you can be taking a picture of anybody around. But if you're on the street and somebody's walking past you and you're very obviously, I'll try to trick them a little bit. I'll go like this. So they don't really know that I'm, shooting of them because I'm looking forward. And I'll go like that. Because I have my focus point to the left right now. I'm taking a picture of you right now. I have my focus point to the left, taking a picture of you. And I'm actually going to take a picture of this old man right there. And then I'll just look off to a different direction, and that kind of helps me. Sometimes people go, hey, like that, and I'll look up in the opposite direction. I'll be like, oh, like that. So I'll kind of change it up, or I'll try to go from the hip if I can. And if I'm going from the hip, again, I'll try to look in a different direction to make it seem like, because nobody wants to be that one. Why are you taking a picture? I'm not taking a picture. They don't want to be that guy. So,
do you need a fancy camera to do street photography?
No, you don't. But if you have a gear acquisition syndrome like me, you always think that you need new and exciting gear in order to get the shot. But no, you don't. You don't.
I got news for you. I have gear acquisition syndrome as well.
It's a thing. It's a thing. You know, it's like you're either addicted to social media, sex, or photography.
So Jason brought along his Viltrox 23mm 1.4 XF, and I decided I want to give it a try, and then I let him borrow the Sigma once again.
Don't be caught slipping. Sigma.
What do you think about the build quality?
It's cool. I mean, Sigma's weird because they tend to feel a little plasticky and light.
Oh, hold on, you got to get that. It's a didgeridoo.
That is a didgeridoo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is freaking awesome.
So even after all that, Jason and I spent another hour or so running the Fuji 35 1.4, the Sigma 30 1.4, and the Viltrox 23 1.4 through their paces. We even swapped out cameras, which is a really bad idea because I tried out the XT4 and now my credit card is like, yo. But yeah, all three lenses were great for street photography.
So, I want to talk about my impressions, and I want Jason to talk about his impressions of some of these third-party lenses that we used, his thoughts about how he compares them to the Fuji lenses. So let's start with the Viltrox 23 1.4.
Well, I thought about getting the 23mm Fuji, but because of the price, I opted for the Viltrox, and I'm pleasantly surprised. The only thing is it does exhibit some chromatic aberrations and like purple fringing, really bad purple fringing. But if you get the shot and you don't get that fringing, it renders really amazing shots. Yeah, I really love this 23. I so far have not gone up to the Fuji 23mm, even though they have a new one that has weather sealing and a faster autofocus. But I've still stayed with this thing. I have not upgraded.
What were your impressions of the autofocusing capabilities of the Sigma versus your Fuji 1.4?
I think it was really quick, really snappy, but I think my skills when it comes to the autofocus in this camera is a little washy. This is the first time I've gone out with my XT4. So I have an XT3, I've had the XH1, the XS10, and the XE3, and this is my first time going out with this thing. So I would like to spend a little bit more time with it just to get used to it, but it's very, very quick and very, very quiet as opposed to my 35.
But the Aperture Ring, the lack of Aperture Ring, being a Fuji user, was a little bit hard for you to get used to.
Yeah, because I'm going like this. You know, I find myself wrapping my hand around a lens that has nothing on it, so I'm going, yeah. So I think it's just about adapting, or it's just about like what feels intuitive to me. And the Fuji system just feels intuitive. It feels intuitive for me to like be moving dials as opposed to just being like this.
I think that the 30 1.4 was very snappy, like you said, very quiet. And you know, the Fuji 1.4 too was pretty snappy. Sometimes on the, like when I was focusing, when I was going from a close object to a back object, I'd find on the back object that the Fuji would like overshoot it and have to recorrect itself a little bit. But it's also a 10-year-old lens. But in general, their speeds to me were similar. I don't do technical reviews. I don't like to take pictures of charts. You know, my impressions are, if you come from the Fuji world and you already have the 35 1.4, you probably don't want to get the Sigma because you already have a really great lens. You're probably eyeing the 33 1.4 now because it's a slightly improved design, better optics. So I don't know if that's really for you, but if you're coming over from Sony, Lumix, Nikon, Canon, and you're interested in getting into the Fuji system and you're not really hip to the Aperture Ring, then the Sigma is probably perfect for you. You can just use dials on your body, just like you've been using, and you can enjoy all the beautiful benefits of the Fuji X-Trans sensors. We're talking about our impressions of using it. Let's go take a look at some of the files that we took, because now we're going to pull them up on our big 5K monitors and zoom in and pixel peep a little and figure out what we like and don't like about these lenses.
All right, so I pulled up some examples. Everything's in classic chrome, so it's the same color profile. So Jason was shooting on an XT4, and I was shooting on an XT20. So there's going to be differences in sensors and things like that. I started off with the 35 1.4 from Fuji on my XT20, and I'm going to put it up against an XT4 shot with a 30 millimeter. Personally, and you know, some of it is biased because I'm looking over here and I see some color that I like and this and that, but I personally gravitate toward this shot. One is more posed and the composition is better on this one. His is more of a candid shot of Jason just taking a picture of Michael. I don't know what it is, but I really just like the way the colors turn out. And you know, if you zoom in on his hat, I just like the way that his hat looks as well, like the detail and everything. None of these have been tweaked, by the way. These are just straight up classic chrome examples. But, you know, I guess I slightly lean toward the Fuji in this case. I think the Fuji is better than the Sigma. Now, the Sigma has an interesting punchy look to it, almost like you took the clarity slider up a little bit. I'm not saying that any one is better than the other. I'm just describing the differences that I see to my eyes. At the end of the day, you may prefer the punchier look of the Sigma, but there's something about the Fuji, like color-wise, I feel like the color reproduction on it is just a little more pleasing. Let's see another example. So let me pull up these bikes real quick. Okay. Once again, I'm still shooting on the XT20 and the 35. Jason is on the XT4 and the Sigma. Now, I am more open here, and he is more stopped down here, so naturally his is going to be a little sharper than mine. But once again, it's almost like the clarity slider is being turned up or something. Just a little punchier. There's something about the colors that I like a little better on the Fuji 35. But then again, you know, you could like this punchier look of the Sigma, and then you could probably get the colors from the 35 over here to match them. So we switched lenses. Now I'm using the 30 millimeter from Sigma on my XT20, and Jason is using the 35 from Fuji. I also noticed, once again, consistently, the colors on the Fuji lens. You look at these greens. I think that the greens look a little more pleasing on the Fuji than they do on the Sigma. The Sigma still kind of has that clarity bump going on. It's super sharp. Both lenses, by the way, are super sharp. We zoom in. Look at that. They both look sharp. You know, my takeaway, honestly, is they're really close. So I don't think that one is like a clear winner over the other. I've seen some examples online that show that the Sigma is definitely sharper in the corners and this and that, but we're not doing that sort of review. Let's do one more example. So once again, everything's classic chrome, but when we zoom in, it's still very sharp. I think I missed focus a little bit on his face. I think the focus is actually a little bit more on his body. That's a me thing, but it's still a very sharp lens. And then when you look at it versus the Fuji, I do prefer the Fuji in this example. Once again, the color, and with it being stopped down, it's just a really nice looking lens. So my takeaways on all of these are they are a little different. I feel like the Fuji reproduces colors a little better, and that overall the Sigma is a little punchier. Now, with the Sigma being a new lens and there being a lot of buzz around it in the Fuji community, I'm going to show you a few more examples that I took. I didn't stop down enough, in my opinion, on this episode, so I went and did a few more sessions and stopped down. You can see some better examples of the sharpness. I also alluded to portraiture shoots on this, so I went ahead and did another portrait shoot with Sophia Bachon, and I just wanted to show you how Astia Soft looked with a 30mm to give you a slightly different rendering of colors. Now, I also thought the Viltrox was an incredible lens. I may actually just go out and buy the Viltrox. It's only a few $100s, and honestly, like, look at the contrast and the color reproduction on this. This is a fantastic lens, and it does come with the Aperture Ring for all you Fuji users. Chromatic aberrations aside, when shot wide open, it was a pleasant surprise of a lens. Okay, so what's my final verdict on these lenses? Well, both lenses are great. I liked the color reproduction of the Fuji a little better. I thought it had a little bit more character as a lens. The Sigma was a little punchier. So at the end of the day, which one did I choose? Well, I chose the Sigma, the 31.4. My reasoning was quite simple. Fuji's not my primary system. I come from the DSLR world. I'm a Canon user. If I were primarily a Fuji user, I'd obviously favor the Aperture Ring. However, they have newer versions that have weather sealing. They have a new 33 1.4, so I'm not even sure if the 35 1.4 is one I'd go for. Now, I can see why a lot of you Fuji users out there love the 35 1.4 and its character. It absolutely showed that in my testing. It's a very special lens, and I can see why 10 years later, there's still a lot of enthusiasm around it. But at the end of the day, like I said, your moneymaker lenses are the ones you spend the money on. And since I shoot street photography primarily for fun, it's a hobby. I make my money off portraits. Yeah, $339 for the Sigma versus $600 for the Fuji made this decision a no-brainer. I also feel like I can tweak the colors in post easy enough to get my Sigma to render color the same way that the Fuji did. I did prefer the punchiness of the Sigma. I like punchier lenses, so that kind of spoke to me as well. But really, there is no wrong answer here. It's whichever one works best for you. Anyway, that's my review today. I also want to thank Jason Berkman for participating in this episode. Please go check out his YouTube page in the description below. And also, if you found this video helpful, if you found this video educational, please click the like and subscribe buttons below. I really do appreciate your support. This channel is growing thanks to you. I'm getting great ideas for episodes thanks to your comments. And until next time, I'll see you. Bye.